Hi everyone, today I'll be talking about the AEM and the target integration and all the common issues associated with this integration. By the end of the session, we'll know how the AEM and the target integration happens, how to configure it, all the common issues and common steps to debug, and a quick demo. Now let's start. Why do we do the AEM and target integration and how? Let's talk about how the integration is done first. It's basically done with two methods, one using the cloud services and other is using your marketing cloud ID, or which we call is your using the DTM, which is itself a framework. Now primarily here in this session we'll be focusing on the cloud service integration between the AEM and the target, which uses a classic UI or classic target at the background, which is connected to the AEM. Now let's give it a thought. In the world of the content marketing and digital experiences for the customers, we really need to integrate AEM with Target to create personalized experiences for website visitors. What else does it helps with this is to convert all the visitors into potential customers using tracking their conversion rates. Besides this, we can also do an A/B testing and content targeting. Now, how does that work? Let's go into the prerequisites and the details of how this integration works. To make this integration work, we need an Adobe Target Access or ID. We should have an AEM author and an AEM publish instance. The AEM author instance replicates all the data to the AEM publish using the AEM replication agent. There is also an agent which is the target agent between Adobe Target and AEM author. What this agent does is it replicates all the data between AEM and target. This is the flow diagram for your understanding on the screen. Now let's see how to configure this using the cloud services. Configuring AEM to target is really an easy one. All you need is your credential ID, your client code, and your password for the Adobe Target or the Omniture website where you log in. After you log in to AEM, you just need to go to the cloud configurations and configure the Adobe Target integration over there. You just need to create that demo account or maybe a demo setup, since it has been named as this in this reference example, and then fill in your client code and email ID. Here you would have an option to choose the API type, which could be either REST, XML, or the JSON. The JSON is the most recent format of the APIs which have been included since 6.3. We can also use the client library as mbox.js, which is by default, or the at.js, which has the support for a new library since 6.3 AEM. Now, do you see this option of synchronizing segments from Adobe Target? This option would bring all your segments from your target to your AEM instance and do a synchronization between them. You will get a button to connect, and once you have connected, all the websites where you configure this target configuration would include this particular mbox.js or at.js depending on what you have chosen. Now if you see in the AEM screen, you would see integrations like this. The website would have a targeting option which would be enabled on each page explicitly. Now, since we have gone through the configuration settings, let's talk about how to troubleshoot the AEM target in issues. The first thing here is the Marketing Cloud debugger. Do you see the blank screen here? The JavaScript code, which is already provided in this complete screen, you just need to save this as a bookmark in any of your browsers. And once your instance is connected, you need to see whether you are retrieving data or not on this small dialog box. If you see no requests found, it means your integration is still not working and the traffic is not coming through. But if you see information like this and the dialog being populated, which means all the data is being fetched and the integration is working fine. This has to be generally used either on your publish or author instance only for testing. From this particular window, what here you can do is just select for the product you need. Here we are going to select the test and target because that is the traffic which we have to monitor right now. We select the test and target and see whether the data is coming. And if it is, then the integration with target is working fine on your instance. Now let's discuss about how you can see or debug issues on the AEM side. In your AEM, there is a Felix console on your author and your publish instances. What recommended is you go to your AEM author instance and set up a logger in your system console Sling log. You can set up a logger named analytics.log as shown over here and specify the particular three classes, which would be target integration, analytics integration, and target recommendations. This would actually get a debug message on your analytics.log on each and every activity that's happening between AEM and target, which would help you to narrow down the issues. This is very helpful to analyze when synchronizations between AEM and target do not work fine. For the configurations on the target side, we have seen a lot of times, even after you configure on your marketing cloud or on your the cloud service that we went through in initial slides, you do not see the connection to be working. Another reason for this could be you need to go to your AEM configurations in the Felix console and verify and check that the target API URL you're using is the same one which you use to log into a particular target account. And also, you have to make sure the same is configured in the test and target endpoint configuration on your AEM side. Both these configurations are important parts because without having these configured fine, it would really not make your integration work or sync any kind of data. Now I'll be talking about some common AEM target integrations we have seen based on the experience of customer care reported by various customers. We've seen customers reporting that the audiences do not show up in the AEM publish instances specifically for 6.2. This is actually an intermittent issue and has been fixed in 6.2 SP1. Generally, when the audiences won't load, would be something what you would check in your developer console or developer tools for any of the browsers and see if there are any access permissions or any other issues related to the UI side. Another common issue here is that the audiences cannot be deleted in Touch UI since 6.1. I specifically mentioned 6.1 because before that it was possible to do that in the classic UI, but not using the Touch UI. So now this has been tracked as an improvement in Touch UI and is being tracked by the internal Jira NPR 16767. There are many times we have had customers report to us about Angular variables not compiling in any of the container or any of the component that has been targeted. Now what happens for this specific problem is Angular is anything that's taking values or have breadth, height, or width. There has been an improvement logged, and it's not yet implemented in 6.2. The improvement is still being tracked in CQ 56726 and may be considered for a CFP or inclusion or a service pack inclusion in 6.3. Until 6.0, it was possible to target the containers in classic UI, but that is not possible since AEM 6.1 and above. Now the problem here is the touch UI, which does not support having a container or elements inside a container to be targeted. Now this is marked as an improvement and it's being tracked as CQ82200. For a workaround, you can just use your classic UI because it still works on the classic UI. There are several times you might just run into a situation where you're trying to create a new activity on your AEM page and it's not saving. And the reason here could be as simple as the user access or the permission the user has. Now you must be wondering about which user are we talking about here. This is the same user which you used to sign in into Adobe Cloud Service for your Adobe Target account. Let's take an example. Do you see the screen here, which has two users, Zofia and McKay? Zofia is an approver, whereas McKay has only read-only permissions. So in such a scenario, when they're both logged into AEM from their instances and they're integrating to our target, Zofia would be able to create and save activities as well as synchronize everything, but McKay may not be able to create or save activities. He just would be able to just synchronize everything. And this is the reason that we have always suggested that all the users that are being used for integration should actually be approvers on the target side. Another common issue is that the segments do not synchronize between target and AEM. For such kind of situations, important is to understand that there are no network delays. Have your AEM logs configured, all those three classes which we talked about in a few slides back, and see a debug on that whether that sync has failed or there's an issue to connectivity. Also, if that doesn't work, you'll have to check for the additional configurations in your configuration status for target side and the target endpoints in your AEM. These were the two screenshots we just referred to a few minutes back. There would be times when you would see your segments are not shown up in your publish instances. And here the dispatcher plays a very important role. So you'll have to make in your dispatcher configuration that your EDC is not blocked in any of the filters. And all your anonymous users should have access to read in EDC, because there would be anonymous users which would be accessing your publish instances. And if you rule out the dispatcher configuration, then it's fine. You should look for the segment ID to be resolving all the activities and audiences, and all of them are activated. The way you can resolve this is you can just actually take the ID that is coming on your target environment and compare it to the traffic or the marketing cloud debugger on your author. This is just a table of comparison between AEM 6.2 and 6.3 for some very common AEM target issues. The first one is for the OR condition that is not synchronized with target, which has been logged as an enhancement both in 6.2 and 6.3. There is another common issue that is Adobe Target is not synchronizing for several segments except the first one. And the solution for this in AEM 6.2 is that the segments are just created in the AEM UI. but it doesn't, synchronize all the segments back from target if there are more than one. The same applies for 6.3. The only change in 6.3 is it has a JSON-based API. Another common issue would be the incorrect teasers under experiences on Adobe Target side. So even if you change the title here in Target, it won't reflect back in the Experience Manager because of the repository node it has been saved in. This was the concept until 6.1, but things have changed since 6.2 and 6.3. Any edits or any changes made are synchronized back and forth between AEM and Target. Now we'll go to a quick demo. I might just need to switch my screens real quick. So now here I am. I have pre-configured few things over here already, just so that the demo is quick. I'll start with an AEM instance, which is a 6.2 instance. I've logged into the instance. I'll go for the configurations, deployment, and the cloud services. We see the Adobe Target option. All we need to do is add a configuration here. And it could be anything. For your reference, I've already created a test configuration and a test framework. One configuration can have multiple frameworks. For example, I create a test 2 here. So this is a second framework associated with the same configuration I have, but I just don't want to name it right now or define it. I just want to have one framework which is already defined. Now going back to the configurations. So this is my client code, the email, the password, and as well as the recommended target settings that come out of the box in AEM. Now after all this is done, we go to the AEM sites. Do you see I have a page selected? If I edit this page, I would go to the page editing part, right? But before I do that, I want to see the properties to whether the page has the target configuration or not. And here is it. And it's really easy to add any configuration to a page. You just select from a drop down, and we've done that once, so it's not lying me. I already have Adobe Target here, and we don't have to bother about the others. I'm going to the page. Do you see this page? What I'm going to do here is narrow the page so that you can see the targeting option real clearly from here. So if you see, this is the option of targeting. Let me just close one URL to avoid any kind of confusions. Now, in this case, I've already targeted this component here, which is the default, right? I'm on the targeting option. Let me refresh this page. And now you see it actually, a test activity has already been created. I can create a new activity, say live demo 1, choose the engine as target, my configuration as test, and I'm doing experience targeting over here. See, if I would not have had the approver rights, the activity would not save. But for this case, the activity saves quite well because we already have the rights. When I select over here, I'll already select the one I have created earlier to this. This is a default which I have on this one. Okay. Now, I have applied here an audience of Chrome. What does it mean? Let's see where. So every time I open a Chrome browser, it does not show me the same image. Do you see? It shows me a different image. And this is what we call is as the personalization. I selected this as a default image, but I have targeted this component that every time this component opens on a page which is using the Chrome browser, it should show the Chrome users as this. This really helps in all the user tracking and other things we quickly use for the AEM target integration. I hope the sessions is helping everybody to understand, to get into the basic insights, and this live demo of content targeting helped as well. Thank you so much for listening to me.